Raw 4 TV. What's up, YouTube? This is 2 Raw 4 TV, aka Darth Apocalypse. All right, so before I get into this video, shout out to Dorian for the donation to the channel. And this is a video request. And it is who would win between the 1998 Chicago Bulls and the 2002 Sacramento Kings. So you have one of the teams that is sort of in some ways, a precursor to today's more run and gun basketball with more emphasis on scoring and shooting, coached by the late Rick Alderman. And of course, you have the very last Chicago Bulls team of that dynasty squad, the 97-98 Bulls. I believe that Sacramento Kings team won 61 games. Chicago Bulls won 62 games. Now, from a talent perspective, position for position, the Kings are more loaded than Chicago. But Chicago is a more battle-tested and more disciplined team, in my opinion. And in these hypotheticals, I look at certain things. I look at rule changes. Now the basketball was changed a little bit, but not enough time had elapsed to the point where I thought that it would be a huge difference. I mean, zone was that the first year zone was allowed? I think that's the first year that zone was allowed, 2001, 2002. So that could make a bit of a difference. But, in my mind, I always say the whole team plays by the rules of their era. Right? So, and of course, you have the Bulls who are coached by legendary Phil Jackson, right? I've thought about this one, and maybe you guys come to a different conclusion, but I think the Chicago Bulls win this one in 7. And the reason why I say 7 is only because of the age of the Chicago Bulls starting to take a little bit of a toll on them. But I think Chicago Bulls come away with this. Now, I know some people might say, oh, man, the Bulls never faced a center like Vlade Divac in their playoff run. Yes, they have. Shaquille O'Neal, Patrick Ewing, Rick Smits, so most definitely the Chicago Bulls have faced greater centers, but I get it from a skill standpoint. Vlade, could score, he could rebound, he could defend, he could pass. He had great shooting ability for a big man of his era. But when you look at the 91 finals, for instance, when he was with the Lakers and playing with Magic Johnson, in that series he averaged about 18 and 9 a game. When he was with the Hornets, which was 7 years later, and he played against the Bulls, he averaged about 12 and 7. So this is an even older version of Vlade, 2002. I don't see him consistently averaging 20 and 10 or anything like that. But just because he's playing with a lot of talent, it's gonna be spaced out a little bit more. I give him a little bit more than he did in '98. I would say he averages about 15 and 7.5 rebounds or something like that in this series, right? Now, Chris Webber, Now, you'd be tempted to say that Chris Webber's going to go off in this series, but when you look at the history of his performances against that version of the Chicago Bulls, it was more miss than hit. He had one 30-point performance against the Bulls. I think that was in 1997. Generally speaking, Dennis Rodman held him in check, right? Dennis Rodman held him in check. He did his job. As a matter of fact, I'll give you an example I'm talking about. In the 1997 playoffs, when it was he was with the member of the Washington Bullets, the last few games they played as a member of the Bullets before they became the Wizards the next season, Webber was the fourth leading scorer in that series, behind Rod Strickland, behind Juwan Howard, and behind Tracy Murray. I think he averaged like 15.7 points per game in that series. So I think he'll average more. I think he'll average maybe 21, 22 points a game, maybe 9 rebounds, 5 assists or something. But, Chris Webber has a history of being an underperformer in the playoffs. It's consistent. And, for all of his skills, Webber never really came across to me as a consistent knockdown jump shooter when it mattered. When you're going up against some trash teams, he could go 11 for 15 from the field, have a great game. When you go up against the best competition, I just noticed Webber did have a tendency to underperform. Peja Stojakovic, Scottie Pippen's going to shut that shit down. Okay? The position I'm more concerned about, oh, by the way, Doug Christie, Michael Jordan, that's a complete mismatch. Doug is an overrated defender. He's a good defender, but overrated. And it was really just mentioned because he was on a team that did not have that many great defenders. Michael Jordan's going to, even that 35-year-old Jordan's going to eat that up. He's going to average more than 30 points a game in this series. Probably shoot around 46, 47%. Remember, this is an older Michael. This is the dead ball era, so a lot more mid-range jump shots. But he's going to do his thing. What I'm concerned about is Mike Bibby. The Bulls historically have had problems with small point guards. I remember in that series against the Pacers, Travis Best had a strong series because the Chicago Bulls are a great defensive team, especially perimeter, but they did have problems against smaller point guards. We saw that with Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. We saw that with Damon Stoudemire. And I wouldn't be surprised in the series against that version of the Bulls, especially, you might see Mike Bibby go off for 19 points a game. Maybe 8 assists a night. Something like that, right? And I think Bobby Jackson would do well in the series. And that's why. Plus, they had some strength for their bench. The Bulls had a weak bench. That's why I kind of give the Bulls some worrisome moments. What I mean by that is I think fatigue could play a factor in this series. Like, if this was the 96 Bulls, I think it's a 4-0 or 4-1 victory. But I can see the Bulls sometimes looking a little bit old in certain games, a few games this series. And while I don't think the Bulls ever get blown out, I can see a couple of games. When I say blown out, I mean like 25-30. I can see a couple of Kings 119, Bulls 104 type games. I can see one game like that. I can see another game where Mike Bibby hits a game winner or something like that. I should have said couple games like that. And I can see a game where Mike Bibby hits a game winner he drops 31 or some shit like that. You know, Kings 100, Bulls 99 or something. Jordan might drop 39, but it's just not enough for some shit. Pippen's going to shit the bed. That's another thing you got to look at. Pippen is an inconsistent shooting motherfucker. So Kukoc will be key in this series, obviously. Weber was never noted for being a defensive shutdown guy. So Tony Kukoc could have a strong series. Although, you know, Kukoc was a horrible defender. So that's the trade-off with it. You know, Kukoc gives you scoring and playmaking and mismatches, especially in that era of the NBA. But I think ultimately, though, I think the Bulls come out on top in 7, and they beat this Sacramento Kings team. You know, that's just what I tend to think, man. But tell me what you guys think.